La programación del Congreso, damos paso al moderador de la...
We're going to give the floor to the moderator for the next table, Antonio Enrique, leader for the Accessibilitech project with over 20 years experience in the accessibility field, developing his functions at the ONCE Foundation. He'll explain us the goals of the project, and he will introduce the main partners of this project. They will tell us how they focus on disability within their own organizations. Welcome, Antonio. The screen is yours. We'll have the questions afterwards. Thank you, Silvia. Together with my colleagues, I will introduce you to Accessibilitech. Going back to its origin, today, when we want to find information on any matter, we go into web explorers. We can just write a few words and we can find thousands and millions even of results. But as you might know, not everything is accessible online or trustworthy. There are some sites that belong to trustworthy sources, but not all of them do. So sometimes the key difficulty is knowing how to differentiate whether it's a good or a bad source of information. There's no exception for the field of accessibility, so we find the same issues. That's why Accessibilitech was launched. Our goal is to define a methodology that will allow to identify and to disseminate projects and solutions that are innovative within the European environment. They use accessibility to guarantee accessibility or usability for people with disabilities. From the beginning of the pandemic that was caused by the COVID-19, there were three key areas that have experienced a quick evolution. Those were the focus of the Accessibilitech project. We are developing a website, and through the use of manual techniques and artificial intelligence techniques, it will be possible to view on a map of Europe all of the solutions that are accessible and inclusive after having checked whether they comply with European accessibility standards. That's where we can offer trustworthiness and value that we mentioned before. Another goal of the project is a transfer of knowledge regarding accessible technologies. There will be an expert panel that will be created. We will try to find communication and collaboration channels in other European media to establish this transfer of knowledge, as I mentioned. We'll do a series of activities that will foster the awareness of how the European society as a whole can realize the benefits that generate the use of accessible and inclusive technology, not only for people with disabilities, but for the whole of the population. In that sense, we will organize a hackathon where we would like to welcome the community of developers and European programmers and developers. They will receive material and support, and there will be 3 challenges, one for each area of the project, so that they can develop accessible technologies. We're also considering creating workshops that will be aimed at the technological sector, also to service suppliers, to associations of people with disabilities, and to other key sectors at the European level. Once the project has been executed, we will begin another stage where we will detect further solutions, we will transfer knowledge, and we will study the possibility of scaling the project into other areas, for instance, tourism, culture, or even for other groups of people or other countries. In order for you to get to know better who is behind our project, can you see it? Great. The project is led by the ONCE Foundation and other key partners that you can see on the screen, which are Inserta Innovación, Digital Europe, a European association that represents the technological industry, EASPD, the European Association of Suppliers of Products for People with Disabilities. And today we have a representative of one of each of these institutions. We also have the collaboration of the European network whose values defend the rights of people with disabilities, for instance, the European Forum for Disabilities, and other entities that work at promoting social inclusivity and for social economy, such as the case of Social Economy Europe. I would like to mention that the project is funded by the European Union through the program Rights, Citizenship and Equality. Without their funding, it would have been impossible to create this project. There's something I would like to mention. You will have realized that in the panel, there's a mainly masculine representation. This is just by accident, because in our project, we are very concerned with the gender equality. In fact, one of our colleagues is taking the place of one of our colleagues who is on her maternity leave. Without any further ado, I will stop sharing my screen, and I would like to introduce Enrique García. Enrique is has a technical position at the Universal Accessibility Program within ONCE Foundation. He works in an innovation project within the organization. Enrique is going to explain the technical development of our website. Thank you, Antonio. Hello, everyone. Good evening. And as Antonio said, I will show you the more technical side of our project. It's not knowing the Accessibilitech mapping tool. Our goal is to create state-of-the-art web explorers to promote this and to identify technologies that are accessible, that are easy to replicate, and that could be transferred to other environments. Within this web searcher, we try to find technological tools. If anyone has a technical project and they're wondering whether they fit within our project regarding their level of maturity, we would like to say that the projects includes all types of development within the three key aspects that Antonio mentioned before. These are e-learning, spaces and virtual tools designed to facilitate the learning and distance learning for companies and educational institutions. Then we have remote work. And we finally have remote assistance. It facilitates obtaining the care or the assistance that people with disabilities might need. We're going to look at how technology helps. The mapping tool works in two ways: in an automatic way through machine learning or artificial intelligence, or a manual system. The mapping tool is developed by the machine learning company BigML. The automatic part of the mapping tool, which might be the most complex, it collects data massively to be able to see which projects belong to one category or another within the three areas that we mentioned before, in order to be able to classify them within the mapping tool. We did this process of data collection in the last few months, and we're very happy because we have been able to collect 250 sources for technological projects in all of Europe, different websites where all of these technological projects or repositories are placed. So machine learning will go through all of these websites and using the keywords linked to the three thematic areas, we'll try to find processes that include those keywords. There will be keywords for each theme area or others more generic, such as accessibility, inclusion, or those. With this collection of sources and keywords, machine learning will be able to perform a search in those sources through their keywords and extract technological projects automatically that are being produced at different stages of development in the whole of Europe. I can now show you a mock-up of how this web explorer is going to work for everyone. You can see the two interfaces I'm showing you. On the one on the right, there is a map with where you can see the city of Madrid, and you can see icons that show telecare, e-learning, and remote work at different places in the map. Given the accessibility problems map can have, it will offer the alternative to use a list format. Both will comply with the WKA 201. It will comply with this accessibility standards. We'll also offer a filter to choose any of the three areas. There's a map on the right with the icons related to the three thematic areas, and in the left, a list of the different projects in a list view. Both options will be accessible, and the user could choose which one to use. This is how the mapping tool is going to work. We've seen the automatic and the manual models. The question now is, which are the opportunities that exist within the mapping tool for those projects that are not going to be detected by the automatic algorithm for searching? As I said, we have these 250 sources and the keywords, but you might say, well, my project is not on any repository that the team took into account. So my project won't be a part of the mapping tool, and I won't be able to share it with everyone. Well, we will create a form that can be filled out manually. It can be a person or a team or a university. Anyone who wants to make their project be known in their mapping tool can join us filling out this form. It will request a few some details, the name of the project, email, and you can choose the category of the project, e-learning, remote work, telecare, or other. I would like to highlight this other category because we want to find solutions that help people with disabilities. If you think there's another accessible technology solution that our team needs to take into account, you can choose the other category. I think you will agree with me that there is some video conference tools that can fulfill two of these categories or three of them. There are video conference tools that can be used for a class in e-learning, for a job work meeting in regarding remote work, or they can be used to for telecare, for communicating with your doctor. So the form will allow you to choose all three categories or even the fourth one. Also, the web URL website of the project and are accepting the terms and conditions. We have also included some additional fields that can be filled out, such as the logo, the description, or the website of the company. Here you can see the interface of this manual mode of the mapping tool that we mentioned before. And as Antonio said, you can see all of the partners of our project and you can see the mapping tool. This is quite a final version that has been polished. But if you'd like to know how soon you will be able to include your project in this mapping tool to share it with the world, I cannot say yet. You will have to wait until the end of the session. So thank you very much, Antonio. You have the floor. Antonio, you're muted. We cannot hear you. Thank you. Thank you, Enrique, for this technical analysis and quite clear on how the website was developed and the possibilities that it offers, both automatic and manual, for data entering, and this question that you left for us. I would like to introduce Miguel González. He works in the field of e-learning knowledge in EASPD, the European Association of Producers for People with Disabilities. He has wide experience in scientific research and in the field of e-learning. Miguel, we would like to get to know better your organization, but also we'd like to know how do you implement accessibility?
Okay, hope everyone can hear me okay. I work in a European association for people with disabilities. This is a nonprofit NGO. We provide social services and we support people so that people with disabilities can exercise their human rights on a level playing field. We're very happy to participate in this project where we provide these services to people with disabilities. And we come up with technical solutions to improve the quality of life. In terms of your question, first of all, through our association, with working with the European Parliament, Council of Europe. We work in the development of European policies so that people with disabilities can participate on an equal footing, and putting accessibility on the agenda. And we coordinate the exchange of ideas and discussion about how to improve accessibility for people with disabilities so they can exercise their human rights. And we're also working in accessibility in all different areas to take full advantage of technology and digitization to improve the participation and service to these people. We also coordinate within our members through a forum that working in technology, design networks, and so forth. We develop ways to provide services, increase digital competencies of the users, and we try to increase accessibility in different spheres of action in labor, entertainment, and so forth. Now, just to know a little bit more about our association, I'm going to show you a short video. Let's take a look at that video now.
The future is opening gates to the world of knowledge, to the world of each other. The future is to do not what I need to, but what I want to. The future is going to work in the morning, to meet colleagues, to create value, to be included. The future can be as simple as having an independent life. The future sometimes means a couple of steps with the right help. The future is having the right tool to reach, to hear, to see. To whatever you can imagine, the future is me, with the support I need to live the way I want. The future is now. The European Association of Service Providers for Persons with Disabilities. Improving services, improving lives.
Gracias.
Muy bien, perfecto. Pues muchas gracias.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Miguel. Now we're going to give the floor to José Usero. He's a senior project manager at Digital Europe. And José has a lot of experience in projects. He was a coordinator of a project for a long time, and he works in different areas of ITCs like digital inclusion. And just like with Miguel, Jose, I would like to know a little bit what Digital Europe is doing, and especially how Digital Europe's values coincide with the objectives of the Accessibilitech. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Antonio, for that. It's a pleasure to be here today in the Congress, and especially in this session on Accessibilitech. Let me explain that Digital Europe is a European association representing the technological industry of ICTs, of TICs, and it represents SMEs and many national associations in the ICT, involved in ICTs. Now, through the participation in projects, we're trying to inform our members of what are the key aspects in terms of policies and standards related with technology, and one of them is accessibility and digital inclusion. Now, if we consider that one of the goals of Accessibilitech is developing accessible technologies, inclusive technologies, well, we want to form part of that, obviously, and we have examples of best practices of what these accessible technologies are, how they were made, what the different characteristics are, what success they've had in the market to transfer these to our partners. They're very interesting in terms of technology and policy and everything having to do with accessibility in the digital world.
Disculpa, no se te escucha.
No se te escucha.
We can't hear you.
Perfecto, disculpa.
There we go. Sorry.
Que
Sorry, yeah.
muchas gracias,
Thanks
José,
very much,
por la
Jose,
explicación.
for that
Como-
explanation.
como dicen todos, realmente,
As you can
como
see,
han comentado los compañeros de Digital Europe y
as our
EASPD,
colleagues from Digital Europe and EASPD said,
la elección de los
the
socios,
lesson
una mera casualidad, hemos
of the
elegido a los
partners,
compañeros
we've
adecuados,
selected the
para el
right
proyecto,
people here for the
con una
project
representación muy
and with a
importante
very important
de defensores
representation
a lo
of
largo de
players at
Y yo
European
quiero
level. I would like now
unas breves preguntas.
to ask a few questions. Specifically, I have a question for Miguel.
Que la lea, porque realmente, bueno, aunque la he redactado yo mismo, la pregunta es larga y compleja.
It's a complicated question, Miguel.
¿Cómo podemos asegurar
How can we
una alineación
ensure
completa y
full
beneficiosa
alignment
de
and
sectores
beneficial alignment
sociales
of
y de
social
asistencia
services and
con el
assistance
proceso
with
de transformación digital
the digital
sin dejar a
transformation
nadie atrás?
process without leaving anyone behind? Well, to ensure this beneficial alignment with social services through digitization is by training people with disabilities so that they have real access to digital platforms and to providing opportunities in development and to be more inclusive, and also with the service providers that they have the opportunity to offer lifelong learning. It's important to understand that technological advancement could be an opportunity or a threat for people. It could create inclusion or exclusion. So technological development that leaves no one behind could give rise to more sustainable communities. I think not prioritizing accessibility in technological development and not taking advantage of this development to provide opportunities, labor opportunities, is not only unjust, but it's a real loss of human resources, isn't it? So service providers, social services providers, politicians, researchers have a key role to play in developing a more accessible and inclusive society. All contributions, of course, are very welcome to reach these to reach all of these opportunities. I completely agree with what you just said. And so we have to raise awareness at European level that this is a benefit for the entire, all citizens. Jose, I'd like to ask you, what are the basic criteria that define digital accessibility? Well, that's an easy and difficult question because it would appear to be clear. Obviously, in Europe, the criteria for accessibility are included in a European standard, which is EN 3049, which since 2014 has been updated and is considered an adaptation of the web standard, but including regulatory aspects and areas like accessibility. That's at regulatory level. But then At other levels, there's European legislation where disability is mentioned, or there are specific articles on accessibility. For example, we have the telecom package or the procurement directive.
Compras públicas.
But the most important thing is there are two specific directives on accessibility. The first is the Web Accessibility Directive, which specifically focuses on how to ensure web accessibility for public sites and applications in the public sector. Not only does it set up the specific criteria of how they have to develop, but a whole methodology for the monitoring of how they evolve. So accessibility is no longer objective. It is an objective that moves in time. It needs to be adapted. It needs to adapt to new technologies. And then, so there are new accessibility requirements, everything having to do with artificial intelligence, for example. That's one. The Web Accessibility Directive suggests or obliges web pages in the public sector to be accessible and to adapt little by little to accessibility. But in recent years, work has also been done on the Accessibility Act. This includes basic criteria for a whole set of technologies in the private sector, books, e-commerce, and so forth. So for the first time, we have a directive now that suggests that certain technological sectors have to be accessible because they're essential for the provision of services. Now, on a more political level, there are ministerial directives that talk about e-administration based on the users or the value of e-administration, where accessibility has an important relative weight. So at the end of the day, we're talking about accessibility, and when we talk about usability and user-centered approaches and so forth, with nuances, but all of this is related to accessibility, although the terminology might differ, and there might be slight differences between the concepts. Antonio, I would like to follow up on what Jose said and say, as he said right now, digital accessibility and technological accessibility related to web pages and applications especially, we are lucky, as I mentioned, we have standards now that regulate accessibility. But as he mentioned at the end, I think it's very important that the third sector, the public sector that regulates this, and this software development and the captation of the requirements and needs, the design, implementation, quality control. It's important that since we do have this legislation and these rules from the very beginning, this needs to be implemented, because when you try to include accessibility, when you already have the product or service finished, it's much more difficult and much more costly, not only in economic terms, but also in time, in terms of time. It's not the same if accessibility is considered in the design for everyone, as Jose mentioned. So from the design point to bear in mind all of these criteria that you have to comply with in terms of accessibility, then doing it at the end when everything is finished. And there's things in the software that cannot be undone, or if you have to undo them, it would cost a lot of money and time that wouldn't have to be spent if they were done in the very beginning. I completely agree. And this leads to two more things. One, the erroneous concept that accessibility has a cost, and it shouldn't really. Simply, if accessibility is integrated in your organizational process and in the development, it doesn't have a cost. It's simply part of the development of technology. And the second concept is related with the quality of the design. If we consider that accessibility ensures that the final design of the products and services are of quality, no one would doubt that it's important. So when we talk about the quality of products and services, it's essential. It's absolutely essential for accessibility. Thanks very much for that, Jose. In just a few minutes, you really synthesized the standard on accessibility, which is quite complete. You said everything. I don't think you left anything out. So you gave us a good overview. And as you mentioned, in our platform, when we're looking at these solutions and innovative projects, they're going to bear in mind all of these European standards. Also, I'd like to highlight one of our other colleagues at European level has been helping us, or helping the national associations they've disseminated a publication to help national organizations. And as you said, the design from the very beginning, user-centered design, and if the user is a person with a disability, then it has to be done properly. In our experience, we've had a lot of cases where a person or an organization came with a product designed for people with disabilities, but when you ask them if they've done user tests, they say yes. For example, that chair, monitored chair, was used by one of the students. So when we're talking about user-centered design, it has to be a real user. And then, Enrique, you're working on innovation projects, and many of the technologies that we're including in the platform are innovative technologies, cutting-edge technology. Right now, in your opinion, what technologies are the ones that are being used most frequently to promote accessibility? And then looking into the future, or looking into your crystal ball or your experience, what do you think has the greatest potential for the future? Well, I think, Antonio, to set the context, the pandemic a year ago put certain needs on the table that we didn't expect and completely changed our scope of action, because our life completely changed and we had to adapt to all these new circumstances in an unexpected fashion. So in that case, Accessibilitech was born because we found that when we all were at home, many people had to completely change their normal atmosphere of classes, of work, or situation, or their life. They had to change their lives radically. And accessibility became even more important because the context where the people were working was completely different. So we've been talking about e-learning, telework, technological solutions to solve all of these accessibility barriers. So I think with the project and the mapping tool, as you said, we will be able to cover, thanks to technology, many projects to help to solve these new accessibility barriers that we were presented with in an unexpected way. So I think that technology, is growing exponentially. And I think that robotics, machine learning, as you know, the mapping tool itself will have machine learning integrated. So robotics, everything that has to do with artificial intelligence and machine learning, and maybe virtual reality, which is also something that we're discovering that there are applications that help to improve the lives of people with disabilities. And maybe the virtual reality and augmented reality are the two types that now being promoted and can really be used in the new projects, and the technology will be moving over the short and medium term. I think those three: robotics, machine learning, and virtual reality or augmented reality. It's also true that technology, in terms of their accessibility, when they're more established or when the accessibility is better, as we mentioned earlier, right now the web pages and the applications uh, and the access to documents and all of our Word and PDF documents are more accessible. It's much more defined. There's regulations, there's legislation for that, so that the uh, accessibility is much more established. And in robotics and machine learning, and in the case of virtual reality and augmented reality, we're in more of an experimental stage in terms of accessibility. We'll see what possibilities this gives us. So, in my opinion, I really think that robotics, machine learning, and virtual and augmented reality over the medium and short term in terms of accessibility.
Y José, tú un poco que, bueno, que estás digamos, en la meca de la industria digital
Yeah,
europea.
the mecca of the European technological industry. Where do you see things are going? Closer to what Enrique's seen, or do you look at any other type of technology in the future? Well, I fully agree with what Enrique is saying. It seems that our minds are connected. Robotics and machine learning. Probably I will talk about artificial intelligence and VR, virtual reality or augmented reality, even AR. There are some technologies that haven't fully consolidated yet. When I used to work for you, for Fundación ONCE, we did this study analyzing accessibility in different technologies throughout Europe. Our findings yielded that those countries that were more developed technologically, such as Norway, Finland, Sweden, accessibility was better, but it's not that they were doing anything. It was just that the technology was much more advanced. They were buying more expensive CMS than they were better. So they were already taking into account more accessibility features. We go back to concept of accessibility as a synonym for quality. When a CMS is better, is usually more accessible. And well, this is a question, Miguel, in your field of e-learning, which technology is being more widely used, which is more effective for promoting accessibility, or which one do you think has the higher potential for the future? I will think artificial intelligence that has been developing a lot in the last few years. I think any technological development can be of benefit to improve the quality of services to reach people. I see that we are all agreeing, even though this is supposed to be an open discussion. But I think it's great that we all agree and that we're not doing things so poorly. I think it's quite the opposite. I don't know if there are any questions from those who are here. Yes, we have a few questions from the audience because this was so interesting. First question is for Miguel. Miguel, what was the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on services for accessibility? Well, I agree with what Enrique previously said on how COVID became a big challenge for people in general. But the sanitary and social urgency, the health and social urgency created by the pandemic regarding social services, there has been a huge spike in the demand for social services. There's been a scarce personnel. There have been many representatives of organizations such as UNICEF have explained how there has been greater levels of social exclusion. So what was the impact of COVID-19? Well, this is a very important field of study. It's still very difficult to find yet how much exactly it has been an impact. In general terms, for some countries, it was possible to adapt throughout technology by improvising through the use of technological solutions that were already there. They were able to keep in touch suppliers and users. But in other countries, the digital gap is quite wide. So even people had to begin to learn how to use technology from scratch. Also, the same case for some service suppliers. So this was a great difficulty.
Sobre las ventajas de rediseñar los servicios sociales para adaptarse a la era digital, de hacer los servicios más accesibles.
We need to adapt to the digital gap. We need to adapt services digitally. We need to better train suppliers of services and users. We need to understand that technology should ease the supply of services, and for this, users need to have accessible tools. This project not only offers to EASPD and their members, but to anyone involved. It offers a database for solutions that can facilitate the reflection or the improvement of service supplying. Next question is for José. How has COVID-19 affected the accessibility of digital services and products? Has it aided to facilitate the interaction of people with disabilities? Well, I think obviously in the last 2 years of COVID-19 and the pandemic have helped into a digital transformation that is quite deep in many different sectors. Well, this is obvious in the sectors such as remote working, remote learning, or remote healthcare. But well, any digital transformation doesn't take into account accessibility, and inclusion is in the end an exclusive and excluding project that excludes people with disabilities, the elderly, immigrants, and all of those who live in rural areas with poor signal. Those are a risk of being left out. So the digital transformation needs to be a holistic approach where organizations are part of an awareness raising process where accessibility is considered an added value, a success factor, something that is taken into account from the beginning, something that is related to the accountability of the company. A product that can be used by more people will be more profitable. The more customers on online banking, or health insurers know if they have more customers, they receive more benefits. But at a different level, when we have more students with disabilities or more remote workers, this amounts to better life quality and better integration of people with disabilities and better life quality for them. More students means that the workforce will be more inclusive and fully integrated for our country. So if we want inclusive education, that means we'll have more people working a more flexible working structure and better life quality for all. That means that technology is a catalyzer for digital transformation. But a digital transformation that excludes many groups of people is not what we wish for. In the end, we need to think about what we want. And this is very easy. Do we want a person to pay taxes and be well trained and have a good job to be able to pay many and very good taxes, or to receive taxes? I think the answer is obvious. Yes, the taxes part was crystal clear. The next question is for Antonio. Antonio, have you taken into account including people from Latin America or the Caribbean into your project, Accessibilitech? In our sustainability and continuity stage, as I mentioned before, we hope this project is replicable in other sectors.
También lo hemos debatido en algún momento, digamos, de hacerlo a otros continentes.
So we have thought about sending it to other continents. I cannot promise it, but it's something that we've been thinking about it a lot. So the person who plays this question has guessed what's exactly in our minds, but we need to see what's the result of our project at the European level. And then we'll see how we can replicate it. Antonio, Silvia, well, we took into account this type of circumstance, and at the manual part of the mapping tool, within the country,
aunque no está contemplado actualmente en la edición actual, como él dice, por el hecho de si lo consideramos ampliar y es la replicabilidad que está contando Antonio, en el campo de país.
In the field, to choose which country you're being sending this project from, there's an other field. So if someone from outside of Europe wants to send us their project to make it more to make it better known, we will be delighted. So we'd like to encourage the person who sent the question to send their project. And after these questions, before saying goodbye to the table, I will give the floor back to Antonio, because I think he wants to show us something. Well, before we finish, I would like to thank my colleagues and also to the audience for being here. I will have to say thank you for the organizers for the opportunity they gave us. But since I work within the organization, well, I am thankful. And well, Enrique sent a question. Do you know when this is going to be available in the mapping tool? For those who have projects that want to join, you can see the response in the next video. Video, please.
Do you have an e-learning, telework, or telecare services project you would like to include in our mapping tool? Accessibilitech is a EU-funded initiative that seeks to develop a next-generation search engine that identifies accessible technologies and solutions. While we prepare the final version of the mapping tool, we are collecting information from technology projects at different stages of maturity, within the 3 areas mentioned above. Whether you are a research group from a university, a company, a non-profit organization, or even an individual, don't hesitate to send us information on your project, tool, or product. So, now it's your turn. Find more information in our website.
Pues muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Antonio. We've understood the importance of technology not placing barriers and that it can be used by everyone, and also the potential of artificial intelligence for finding solutions.